It's time to talk draft strategy. And there's a lot of them out there. And today, we got to look at those running backs. We always got to have some good running backs on a roster, whether you're paying up for them or catching them later in the draft or even off the waiver wire. One of the most popular draft strategies out there is the hero RB strategy. But what if we did it double time and did the double hero RB strategy, drafting 2 running backs in the top of our draft, preferably the top 3 rounds, and then forgetting about the position before coming back to running back, maybe the earliest around round 6 or something. What would our teams look like in this 2024 player pool? We're going to cover a lot of draft strategies between now and the start of the draft. Let me know your favorite in the comments below. Of course, everybody's going to say best player available, but when you look at draft strategies, you look at the board, we're looking at the macroeconomics of things. When do player pools start to run out? When do we start running out of wide receivers? When do the tiers start to break off for any position group? When are the running backs getting shallow? When are the backup running backs starting to ramp up? When should we just start avoiding wide receiver? When is the best time to go wide receiver? That is why we are looking at these draft strategies. And with these draft strategies, when you study all of them and you go best player available, you know what's coming up in the horizon, so you know how to split off your tiers. If you got 2 players you got graded the same at different positions, you know what? You can go with that running back because you know running backs are going to get shallow later in the draft. But before you dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now, because I'm going to get you set up for your fantasy drafts. I'm going to get you set up for the waiver wire, help you with your dynasty teams and everything else. Click that button. Stop missing out. We're going to start off with the first round here, fantasy drafts. We're going to go round by round in the start of the draft, look at the running backs and the wide receivers. And when you look at the first round here, per Underdog ADP, because that's the ADP with money on the line, and that is reliable. That is what the market's looking at. But we're going to also look at this as a Bayesian macro perspective. But these are the running backs going in the first round. CMC, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, and Jahmyr Gibbs. You can pull up some of the round 2 running backs if you wanted to implement this, if you really wanted to. The wide receivers are also very strong. One thing we are noticing per draft strategies from last year, this year, even the year prior to that, wide receivers getting a big boost up boards. Whether it's basic redraft leagues, home leagues, whether it's Underdog, best ball, whatever it is, wide receivers are getting a pump up. Your basic home league, wide receivers will drop down in ADP a little bit or a little bit more, but they are much higher than years past. That being said, the wide receiver well dries up a little quicker than what you want to admit to. A lot of people like to hammer wide receiver, but they're also causing that well to dry up a little bit more. With this double hero RB strategy and this year's batch of players in the first round, you got your running back in the start, but he's probably going to go 101, 102. In the middle, Bijan and Breece. And if you really want to be cemented to this strategy, you're probably going to have to pay up for Bijan and Breece if you're around 103 to 106. And in the back half, Jahmyr Gibbs, but you may have to pay up, or one of the guys from the second round. The wide receiver group here is very solid. I do not advise looking the other way at them. But if you wanted to pivot at running back, these aren't some bad running backs. The first 3 here, Bijan, Breece, Christian McCaffrey, beside injuries, they look like locks this year. They look like they're good to go. Of course, nobody's 100% locked because of injuries. But again, look at the wide receivers there too. I don't know if you want to ignore wide receiver in this round. Maybe you go wide receiver here and then maybe start stacking up running backs, or maybe hoping Jahmyr Gibbs falls a little bit into the second, and then start implementing the double hero RB strategy then. But then we go to the second round here. Devin Achane, Saquon Barkley, and Jonathan Taylor. The only running backs going in Underdog ADP in the second round. And they're getting boosted up there. And the wide receivers are just flowing. We're seeing a ton of wide receivers come off the board. Just 7 running backs so far off the board and 24 picks. That's a lot of wide receivers. And the thing about this, when you really think about these wide receivers in the second round, they're good. They're talented. They got some upside. But when I look at these wide receivers, I can get a little bit scared off too, because I can see the downside in some of them. I can see where situation may not go right. I can see where Father Time might catch up with a wide receiver or two. I can definitely see where some of these running backs are a little bit iffy too when you look at the injuries over the course of time. I mean, you're looking at Devin Achan, Saquon Barkley, and Jonathan Taylor. I mean, if those guys remained healthy over the last 24 months, you would be locking them up in the first round because they're running backs. Running backs can win your league. They can also lose your league as well when you pay up for them. But the thing is, do you start off your double hero RB strategy here? Say you got the turn there, and you go Jahmyr Gibbs, Devin Achan, or Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley. You do that. Or if you're in the middle, you get one of those top wide receivers in the first round, and now you go Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, Jamar Chase, Jonathan Taylor. You rock that. And then you go into the third round. You're looking at what's on the board here. I like Devonta Smith a lot. I think he's very steady. And then you look at the running backs, Derrick Henry, Kyren Williams. I like Derrick Henry in the third. I like him with the Ravens. I think this is going to be a good year for him as long as he's healthy, as long as he's on the field. Then you get to the back half of the second. Michael Pittman. I like him. I think he's going to get a good target share. For fantasy, though, AR-15 might run a little bit. He might spread it out a little bit. The volume might be a little bit slower. There's a chance on that, but I'm never going to go against him. Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, Sam Laporta, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell in the same round. That seems sketchy. Maybe one of those guys. You got to put a flag on somebody there, ADP. You got to do something there. But not both of them are going to give you that top tier results. Maybe up and down. You got DJ Moore, new quarterback. Had a great year last year. Maybe it's better. Maybe it's better. But look at the middle of the third. You got Kyren Williams and Derrick Henry. Going back here, if you go middle of the second, Saquon or Jonathan Taylor, and you rock that with Kyren and Derrick, maybe with like a Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, maybe you're feeling good. Maybe an Amon-Ra St. Brown. Remember, we're thinking macro. So you go one of the top wide receivers, and you go running back. Maybe you're feeling good, but you're looking at the fourth round. Maybe you want to bolster one of these running backs up to the third round. Say you're in a home league draft, and the running backs are flying off the board, and you're saying, hey, I want to get one of these top guys. Travis Etienne, Isaiah Pacheco coming off the board in the fourth round, Underdog Fantasy. Do you want to buoy any of those guys up? Pacheco's on the Chiefs. Good volume there. Good volume with Travis Etienne. Good opportunity share last year. One of the tops in the league, especially starting off the year. And, again, the wide receiver position is starting to get a little bit more iffy here. But you got upside with T. Higgins and George Pickens there in the back end. But what if you buoyed one of those guys up? And you start off jack that wide receiver. You get your two running backs. Or you go running back, and then you start playing money ball with these wide receivers. Third round, fourth round, fifth round. However you want to do it. I want to hear about it in the comments below. But I'm just sharing ideas here. I'm just doing some research and sharing what I'm finding. But then we look at the running backs here. Round one, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan, Breece, and Jahmyr Gibbs. Those are all good running backs. Jahmyr Gibbs, good in PPR. Has some upside. Down weeks, though, David Montgomery. But then, again, on the turn, you can get him. With Achan, Saquon, maybe a Jonathan Taylor, whatever you want. Or you forego the round one running backs. You get a stud wide receiver, and then you hammer any of the next 5 to 6 or 7 running backs. And then round 5, I just threw them in. Josh Jacobs, I wouldn't suggest Cook, but that's your preference. Again, we're looking macro here. Jacobs could fly up the board at the end of the training camp anyways, so you might be looking at him round 4, round 3 anyways. So I'm just throwing the round 5 backs in there. I don't know about Cook, but again, we're looking macro like I said. But maybe you want to throw one of those guys in per preference per you. Not a suggestion, but you go stud wide receiver, running back. Maybe that's a thing. And with that being said, you want to look at the wide receivers coming off the board, rounds 4 through 6. Not horrible. You can play the matchups with these guys, especially if you're stacking the board. Especially if you got one good one in the start. Pretend it's one of those top studs, and Terry McLaurin or T. Higgins or George Pickens. And then you got Marquise Brown, maybe like Keenan Allen or Chris Godwin. I have them highlighted as notable players, T. Higgins and George Pickens. T. Higgins, years prior, before the contract, people were paying round 3, round 2 price tags for him. George Pickens, he's got the offense to himself pretty much. Different quarterback play as well. Marquise Brown with the Chiefs. Chris Godwin, more opportunity in the slot. Deontay Johnson, round 6, should easily get a 20+% target share. Easily gets you wide receiver 2 numbers or better. And the fact is, people were down on him over the course of time due to quarterback play, injuries. This could be a ramp up for him when it comes to volume. You got some rookies here. Rashee Rice, you got suspension, but still with the Chiefs. Good price tag here. You can also take your stab at one of those rookies. Also want to throw out there, last year we were paying around this price tag for the first round wide receivers. At least the first ones drafted, like a JSN. So Xavier Worthy, Rome Odunze, Ladd McConkey is also around that draft range, if not better when you're looking at Rome Odunze. DeAndre Hopkins, faithful veteran, but him or Calvin Ridley for you. Christian Watson, upside 4 days, week to week, downside 2 due to the injuries, but that's just part of the game when you're here in round 6. That being said, you could stack up 3 good wide receivers here that you can play the matchups with, that you have good possibilities on flex as well. But you get to the running backs, round 6, round 7, and here is where the rubber will meet the road in the back half or the middle part of your draft, because you got to start snagging running backs here. You don't have to, but this is where people are going to start getting their backups, start filling out their running back depth chart. So if you're at least going hero RB, you got to start at least thinking about running back in this range. Because coming back to this, Joe Mixon, Rachaad White, Kenneth Walker, I love Joe Mixon, Rachaad White in the 6th round, especially if you can snag them on a turn. We're getting the round 7, David Montgomery, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris. You got a lot of upside with these backs. You got a lot of workload here. They're cheap, round 7. You can really be stacked up with wide receivers. Those are good RB2s for your team if you want to go a little bit cheaper. So if you're going double hero RB and you still want to go wide receiver in the 6th round, you still got some running backs to look at in round 7 and round 8, which could stack up your lineup. And then looking at what a mock draft would look like with this, just throwing this out there, going Bijan, Jalen Waddle, Derrick Henry, T. Higgins, Kyle Pitts, Deontay Johnson, Alvin Kamara, Dak Prescott, Brian Robinson, and maybe even a Brandon Cooks per ADP picks, and just throwing your finger out there and selecting them because you never know what a draft's going to be like. You could get a lineup like this: Bijan, Henry, Waddle, Higgins, Deontay Johnson. What I can say about this is you're going to have a strong lineup. You're going to be strong at the top end. You're really not going to have any weak points except for wide receiver, depending on how you started your double zero RB strategy. If you started with wide receiver in the middle, then went running back, you might be a little better off. You might have some better feelings. That would be my suggestion for you. But you're also still going to be okay at wide receiver. You're going to be okay at running back. You're going to have some good running backs at flex. You're going to have something to play with at wide receiver. You're going to be stacked at running back and be okay at wide receiver. The question is, what's your team going to look like when the injuries hit, when bye weeks hit, when we get to like week 8 or 9? But you're going to start off the season with a strong lineup at all positions, but you will be a little bit thin at wide receiver. You won't be super top heavy. You might not like that. You might be forced to play the matchups a little bit more at wide receiver, but it's not going to be like you're playing matchups with waiver wire fodder either. You're just going to have a slew of guys in those middle tiers that you're okay with, but you're going to be strong at running back. You're not going to be weak at it, and you're going to have good backups to go with it as well, depending on what you do at the running back position in the back half of your draft. I'm going to grade this one a B-. I don't think it's the perfect draft strategy. I'm kind of worried about the wide receiver position. I do like to be studly there, and I feel better when I can stack up a wide receiver a little bit more. I also am worried about the fragility at running back because you're drafting 2 running backs. Running backs kind of getting weird in the 2nd and 3rd round where fragility could happen with some of these guys. We got some older running backs, some guys with injury histories. That could impact your team. I think it's okay, though. I think it can be close drafting best player available. I think you can get close to doing that with this draft strategy, and you can also be deep on the back end. I think you start off with a good starting lineup. I think you have a lot of depth there on the back end. I feel like you're not going to be cornered in the draft, in the back half of your draft, and you really take shots at running back and wide receiver and the tail end, because you're going to have a good slew of players there to start off your league for the season, but there's going to be a lot of opportunity throughout this draft. It's not my favorite draft strategy, but you can also see how you can win your league with it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.